enjoying the day off in celebration of the nation's newest federal holiday. Juneteenth commemorates the emancipation of the last enslaved African Americans over 150 years ago. And yesterday, President Joe Biden signed the bill making the day official. The BBC's Carly Burrow reports.
All right.
For the first time in nearly 40 years, America officially has a new federal holiday. At an event at the White House on Thursday, President Biden signed into law a national commemoration of Juneteenth, which memorializes when the last enslaved people in Texas were freed.
A day in which we remember the moral stain, the terrible toll that slavery took on the country and continues to take. What I've long called America's original sin.
Among those at the signing with the president was 94-year-old Opal Lee, who has been referred to as the grandmother of Juneteenth for her efforts to urge U.S. legislators to make the day a federal holiday.
The bill is passed.
How on earth am I supposed to express the joy? I'm not supposed to express all the years that we've worked and to it come to fruition on the backs of so many people.
Juneteenth is a commemoration of when slavery ended in the United States. On June 19, 1865, the last enslaved people living in Galveston, Texas, received the news they were free. It was nearly 2.5 years after Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. So today is the first time that many Americans have the day off work in honor of the holiday. And in Galveston, celebrations are already underway.
People are aware, it's being recognized, and I truly think that we're going to see a lot of change, a lot of things. Things are going to improve. I just believe in that.
America continues to face a racial reckoning and a national conversation about systemic racism, police brutality, and voting rights issues. The recognition of Juneteenth as a holiday is a reminder of how far the country has come, that many Americans are also taking the day to highlight the work that is left to do. Carly Burrow, BBC News, Washington.
Well, joining me now for more is Rashawn Ray, a fellow at the Brookings Institution, who's also a professor at the University of Maryland. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Why has it taken so long for Juneteenth to be recognized as a national federal holiday?
Well, thank you for having me on. I think when it comes to Juneteenth, to some, Juneteenth represented the stain of slavery. And we also have to recognize that in the United States, after the Civil War, Reconstruction failed. I think if Reconstruction had succeeded and blacks would have been able to get their fair due of reparations at that time, which was 40 acres and a mule, we probably would have seen Juneteenth happen much sooner. And just to tell people the gravity of this, imagine if after the Holocaust, it took Germany 156 years to do something about the Holocaust. And when they did, they simply did a federal holiday. It did not come along with reparations, did not come along with truth and reconciliation. And that is where we are in the United States right now.
So do you see Juneteenth as simply a symbol?
Yes, in many ways. I mean, look, Juneteenth becoming the 11th federal holiday is a big deal. All Americans should celebrate it and embrace it and use this day, similar to MLK's holiday, as a day on and not a day off, a day for truth and reconciliation, a day for healing, a day for reflection and learning. But it doesn't do anything to change the historical and current pattern of the way that systemic racism and the legacy of slavery, Jim Crow segregation, mass incarceration, and over-policing impacts black people in the United States. So as I wrote in Reuters, as I wrote in Brookings with Andre Perry, the next step is reparations. And that is the next pathway in this quest for truth and reconciliation.
Rashawn, do you think that there is more of a political appetite for reparations? Because for many years now, that has been something that many lawmakers have not thought is really feasible.
Well, you know, it's interesting. The United States seems to actually have an appetite for reparations. Reparations were given out in 1988 for Japanese Americans who were interned. Reparations have been given for American Indians in the form of land and funding. And in the United States, as part of the Allied forces, played a role and has continued to play a role in Jews who were interned, who were impacted by the genocide of the Holocaust to receive reparations. The only group that seems to not be able to give reparations are black people. So when we look at America, it seems Americans are fine with reparations. They're just not fine with it for black people. But part of what is happening right now is there is some momentum. Last year, there was a poll showing that roughly 30% of Americans supported reparations for black people. Coupling that now with the 60% of people who have little knowledge about Juneteenth or haven't heard about it at all, as people's knowledge base scales up, I would expect that 30% to increase dramatically, and the legislation that is currently in Congress, I would expect that to continue to gain momentum even beyond where it is right now.
Rashawn Ray, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you for having me.